This is the BioCentury Show. Brought to you by the 12th China Healthcare Summit, returning to Shanghai October 22nd to 24th. Meet top decision makers and investors and get a first-hand look at China's dynamic life sciences ecosystem. Learn more at biocenturychinasummit.com.
Hello and welcome to the BioCentury Show. I'm Jeff Cranmer, Executive Editor, host of the BioCentury This Week podcast, and I'm delighted to be your host today on the BioCentury Show podcast. Today, we are focusing on China's innovation moment. That is the theme of BioCentury's upcoming BioCentury Bay Helix China Healthcare Summit. And joining me is a man uniquely positioned to speak about biotech innovation in China and beyond. James Lee, he's venture partner at Frazier Life Sciences. James has more than 30 years of biotech experience as an investor, company builder, and an executive at an MNC and a biotech. As co-founder and former CEO of JW Therapeutics, James built a commercial cell therapy company, leading the development and launch of China's first domestic CAR T, raising more than $520 million, and taking the company public. He was also formerly GM of Greater China at Amgen, where he helped expand the big California biotech's presence in China. And before that, he was a partner at Kleiner, Perkins, Caulfield, and Byers, investing in and guiding early and growth stage companies. James, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Thank you, Jeff. Glad to be here.
Excellent. James, many of BioCentury's readers and listeners are familiar with the China story. We've been following it here at BioCentury for nearly 20 years. But for some folks, particularly those in the West, they're sort of just catching on now. I really noticed that at JP Morgan in San Francisco back in January, everyone seemed to start talking about China. So for those newer to the China story, James, can you bring them up to speed? What have been some of the key inflection points as China has moved from generics to where it is today?
Thank you, Jeff. So thank you for inviting me to be part of the show, and I'm honored to join you. So if you look at China's biotech or pharma industry, and it really happened about 10 years ago or 11 years ago, back into 2014, 2015, when China started regulatory reform on its regulatory system and how to approve new drugs as well as try to promote innovation and accelerate the R&D approval for innovative drugs. Then 10 years moving on, and we have seen a number of the biotech companies actually emerged from that, reform and thrive through that reform. And especially in last 6 years or so, because the opening up of Hong Kong Stock Exchange 18A listing, then allowed many Chinese biotech companies to get listed in Hong Kong Stock Exchange and get additional funding for the drug development. And that also what you have seen in past couple of years with all the new products have been developed, and then some of them got licensed by the biotech company or multinational companies in the West.
And 18A, of course, allowed non-profitable biotechs to go public on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. It really got off to a quick start. And as China went into its first bear market, things have slowed down, but it looks like it's picking up a little bit again. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. Turning back to the JPM buzz in January, a big theme were these so-called NewCo deals. There were more of a handful of these types of companies that were formed around China assets, with backing by Western VCs. James, I'm curious, was the rise of the NewCo model a reflection of companies getting more creative or being forced to get more creative to tap capital during the bear market?
I think it's both. I think it's because of the bear market, because the funding was not that abundant especially in 2023, 24. And so new co-model with big upfront actually uh, Chinese biotech companies found a way actually get additional funding for its research and development. And but also, this is another way actually Chinese companies get their pipelines and to get developed actually for the patients and outside of China. I think that's also very important. And so yeah, I think it's a both. I think funding is one thing, and also the product itself actually finding its way to the West.
We've seen maybe 15 or so fairly prominent disclosed newcos. I'm sure there's many more lying in stealth as things are moving very quickly and people are reluctant to maybe disclose the target they're going after. I'm curious, how do you see the newco model changing? I don't know if you, one of the panels that we'll have at the China Summit is, are we headed toward a NewCo model 2.0? And I know we've spoken before, and you're like, well, that maybe we're still kind of 1.0. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think things are evolving very quickly, like anything in China. The speed is fast, and so if you look at 1.0, you look at a new code. I think most of them they are mature product and late stage product, and got and with a bond of clinical proof of concept, and form the new code around that. And so these are products at relatively low risk. And so then it's more about the execution in the US or outside of China at the risk, the new co-investor will take. But I think these low-hanging fruits, I call them, or the late-stage product actually, get either picked or bought quickly, either by multinational, just straight licensing deal, or by VCs or investors forming new co. And so what we have seen in the past is that the new co model is evolving into earlier stage. So people look into the assets either phase one or phase one ready, or even before IND ready. People look into the earlier asset. Also, I think we see recent examples, domestic M&A happening, and you saw, Sino Biopharma bought Lenovo for almost $1 billion. And then you also, saw, Sequoia just did a first so-called, domestic NewCo, licensing assets from spin out assets, from Chinese companies. We do see Chinese VCs, especially with their portfolio companies, and try to preserve the value of these assets, and rather instead, going out and forming new cos. And so I see this trend will increase. However, I still think the U.S. bound or westbound NewCo will continue, but it will get earlier, assets-wise, will get earlier and earlier.
And to be clear, I think I cast it as a China-only phenomenon. We have seen some, there was at least one out of Singapore that we saw early this year, a new company that was formed with assets from Piers Ingram's Hummingbird. I'm curious, do you think we'll start seeing this in Korea or Japan as well?
I think the capital or the funding will follow the best science,
Mm-hmm.
as any places. I think we do see in Japan and Korea, you do see some, very good biotech companies, as well as Singapore, I think. Hummingbird, be honest, it started in China, then moved to Singapore, right? So, it's also China related. I do think, with the investment, also promotion from the government, either Korean government or Japanese government, with incentives to promote their own biotech industry, you will see more and more assets popping up in these markets.
And are there particular strengths that are different in Japan or Korea versus China?
Not really. I think we can talk more about the China's strength, right? So we have seen, I think China has been very, very good in terms of a capital efficiency, in terms of getting into clinical testing, and in terms of accessing patients, in terms of speed of development. So these are all very efficient. And then China is getting better in the new biology, looking into new modality. And I think that's also one area I think China is going to be up and coming. However, in Japan and Korea, the way I look at this is that Japan has been traditionally, a pretty good powerhouse in the new chemical entity development, especially for big farmers. Not that many biotech. I think the Japanese government is trying to foster its biotech industry. I remember in the 2009, 10, because of the Shinya Yamanaka got a Nobel Prize for iPSC, invention, and in stem cell, right? So iPSC, in stem cell, and Japanese government pouring a lot of money into the cell therapy as well, right? And for Korea, I think the big companies move into CDMOs, move into biologics productions. And I remember, Samsung and others, they are really good at the large scale biologics manufacturing. So you see also small biotech, develop around these areas as well. So I do see these markets will have, budding kind of cutting edge biotech. And then, honestly, most biotech companies in Asia, they do not have capabilities to develop product in the West or Europe, in the US or Europe. So they have to find a partner. So NewCo is a great model to do that.
Yeah. And in Japan, we have started to see some of these incentives. There's a matching model for accredited VCs. If they're backing companies and assets, there's a match. We're seeing a little bit more risk taking. I think historically Japan has been more risk averse than, say, your China entrepreneurs. And that's slowly starting to change. We're starting to see some biotechs there. And of course, Singapore, you mentioned the strengths in Korea around the biologics. Singapore has really become a center for manufacturing for a lot of Western companies. And it is starting to attract more Western capital. We're going to take a quick break. You'll be able to hear a little bit about our China Healthcare Summit, and then we'll be back to talk about deal making, the deal making environment in China.
From in-licensing to new cos, cross-border deals from Asia are transforming global biopharma. Meet top decision makers and investors at the 12th China Healthcare Summit to explore emerging opportunities and tackle key challenges in this rapidly evolving landscape. Join us in Shanghai, October 22nd to 24th to get a first-hand look at China's dynamic life sciences ecosystem. Register and learn more at biocenturychinasummit.com.
Okay, we are back with James Lee of Frazier Life Sciences on the BioCentury Show, and I hope you do check out BioCenturyChinaSummit.com. Kicks off in a little more than 3 weeks. James will be there. I will be there. Editor-in-chief and host of this program, usually Simone Fishburne will be there, along with executives from many Western companies, top China executives, and all sorts of other folks. So we'd love to sit down with you over a cup of tea in the beautiful St. Regis, Jing'an, and get to know you. Let's see here. Deal making. We kind of touched on one type of deal making, the NewCos. But James, I'm curious, how are you seeing deal making changing in China? It's certainly it's up big time, over the past decade. What are you seeing more recently?
Yeah, so let me get back to the earlier days. I have been, kind of dedicating my life, in past 20 years or so, tried to foster or support cross-border transactions. In the early days, you see Chinese companies will license U.S. product, right? And get into China, build that product around that product and launch into Chinese market. And the hope is that that product will support, a company, or product will support a company. So you see the deal bound towards China. Now, especially past 2 years, you see a lot of deals. Obviously you see big deals, did by strategics, by multinational companies, Merck, Pfizer, AstraZeneca. They have all done big deals, right? $1 billion plus deals. And so these ones actually, I think they are very hard for NewCo model to compete against these deals, because huge upfront, especially when the early days, most Chinese biotech companies, they are thirsty for the funding, for cash. So I think then gradually you see NewCo models, start, I would call it 1.0. You saw a number of NewCo models, putting together by investors and bring Chinese assets to the West. And some successful summit, right? You have the asset, then immediately then went public. But I think nowadays you look at the deal flow, still strategics are very active. I think in multinational companies, they have basically every company has an army on the ground hunting for assets. I was told, one particular companies, they have about 20 people, roaming around China and looking for assets. From late stage to early stage, they go early and early too. And then obviously you have a number of VCs from the West, right? And investors from West to look into assets there and bring the asset to the US and forming NewCos. Now, the challenge for these approaches is that you need to have a balance of the upfront milestones and versus how much total money you go have to raise in order to support these new ventures into next value inflection point. And if the upfront and the total start value too high, then it's going to be harder for the new ventures to raise additional funding. Especially in current situation, the NASDAQ has not completely opened yet, right? So everybody's saying that hopefully NASDAQ will, open up, in later this year and the next year, which very possible. In a situation like this, you probably need to raise enough money to your next level. So if your total valuation is too high, it's going to be challenging as well.
And are companies now thinking more about going to Hong Kong instead of NASDAQ?
Yeah, I think for the NewCo, I think some people have already thought about that, right? So NewCo will get listed in Hong Kong. But then, the new co, there are a number of structural things you need to take into consideration, and then you have to meet the requirement of 18A that your asset, has to be in phase two in order to get it listed, right? There's a long queue actually waiting for the Hong Kong's listing, and people are very optimistic these days on the Hong Kong market, but you don't know when the market, how long that will last. So when people put a NewCo together, they need to raise enough money for, any situation. So your NewCo could be very successful.
Excellent. Well, circling back to deals, I think you were kind of alluding to this. I'm curious to get your take on some of these more eye-popping deals, really, not to overstate it, that we've seen earlier this year, such as the one between Harbor Biomed and AstraZeneca. There was the deal between GSK and Jiangsu Hengrui. Can you talk a little bit about what makes those deals stand out from what we've been seeing in the past?
I think so. I'm less familiar with the Harbor deal, right? Harbor deal, I thought that was asset plus the platform Harbor they have, and which Jing Song is their CEO and chairman. Jing Song is a longtime friend, and they built a very, very unique platform. Actually, been working with the multiple partners in the past, and so I think that was the reason. I think for Jiangsu Hengrui, the $500 million deal, with GSK, I think it probably is centering around their one key asset, right? The leading asset they have, and then obviously they have 11 additional assets.
Yeah.
Early stage assets. So I think it's a balance act, and I think it's GSK did a very smart deal, secure the front running asset at the same time get access to multiple assets in multiple therapeutic area. And Jiangsu Hengrui is a powerhouse in terms of R&D. And they have so many assets. I just don't think that they have the capability to develop all of them outside of China. In China, maybe they have the capability, but outside of China, they need to find a way to either monetize them or need to develop into real product. I thought the deal was very smart. I won't be surprised you will see more this type of deal, like I call it basket deals, and you have a number of product. You have one lead product, then you have a number of other product, either in the same therapeutic area or in different therapeutic area, as long as these assets serve the purpose of a particular company.
Yeah. It is interesting. I mean, I think that, the AstraZeneca deal with Harbor as well. Harbor is sort of a global biotech with deep China roots. They partnered to develop next generation multi-specific antibodies for immunology and oncology. And I think it reflects what you were kind of getting at with the deals moving earlier and earlier. The deal included a $105 million equity investment, which I feel like is one of the new components we're seeing as deal terms change. And Harbor and Hengrui, they're probably two of the most active China companies in deal making. There's some others like Biocytogen, and I'm sure I'm forgetting. KeyMed's been very active. How do you see deal terms changing? And back in the day when we were seeing these like single asset out licensing deals for global rights, I think Western companies felt like they could get a little bit of a discount going to China. I'm curious, is that still the case? And how are deal terms changing?
I think that's still the case. You still get discount, but how much discount? It was 50% off or 20% off. I think, so there's no doubt that deal is getting more expensive in China because people increasingly recognize the value of these assets coming out from China and the quality of these assets, right? So I think, then obviously all the major farmers are looking for additional asset to fill their pipelines. And obviously they have two ways to do this. One is, looking in the US and globally, and the other one looking to China. I think sometimes they found that there's a good fit for their portfolio, and then they pull the trigger. And obviously, China's assets, getting more and more expensive, or drive up the initial payment. We have seen in recent examples.
Now, there's three other deals that I wanted to touch on with you. I think folks have been waiting to see if there's going to be more M&A similar to the big AstraZeneca takeout of Gracell. I think that topped $1 billion. And of course, BioNTech bought out Biotheus for quite a large sum. What we hadn't seen until quite recently was a China-China deal of this magnitude. Do you want to talk a little bit about the Lenovo deal?
Yeah, I think I probably know as much as you do. The only thing I can tell you, I know both company well. Sino Biopharma is a very good, high quality company. They also have their own research engine, and very, they have a number of subsidiaries, very productive, and they're very strong in small molecules, right? Especially in small molecules. And for Lenovo deal, I think, they are more looking into the ADCs and also bispecifics. And I know Lenovo reasonably well, and they have a very strong pipeline in particular area. So I think this is the first time, actually, a Chinese company and pay almost $1 billion, for a domestic company, actually. And it's impressive. It shows the willingness of the Chinese players, actually, now willing to pay good money for valuable assets.
Yeah, and I think another thing that it signals is that if we see more of these China-China takeouts, it would open up a new pathway to exit for some of China Biotech's investors, and that helps the ecosystem get healthier.
Yep, absolutely, that's the way. I mean, you mentioned about the investment from AstraZeneca into Harbor Medicine, right? And so this is a playbook. Actually, you have seen a number of companies play that. In the very early days, Amgen acquired, pretty large stake in Beijing, now Oncology, right? They did that in quite some time ago, and you have other companies did similar deals. So I think people are getting smarter into looking for earlier assets and push earlier. And at the same time, you looking to invest in good companies and share the risks and share the future economics. I think that's the way people are going after.
Excellent. Well, James, I think we could go on for another hour or two with so much happening in China, but we've come to the end of our time. I want to thank you for joining me on the BioCentury Show. I look forward to seeing you in Shanghai in a few weeks. And
thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity speaking to you and your audience. And see you in Shanghai.
Excellent. You've been listening to the BioCentury Show. I'm Jeff Cranmer, your host, and we'll catch you in 2 weeks with our next episode.
Brought to you by the 12th China Healthcare Summit, returning to Shanghai October 22nd to 24th. Meet top decision makers and investors and get a first-hand look at China's dynamic life sciences ecosystem. Learn more at biocenturychinasummit.com.